Inflammation can be really good because it's how we recover from injuries, and it's one of the most important ways of sweeping out toxins in our body. But if inflammation gets out of control, joints start degrading faster, your organs start shutting down, you start aging at a much higher rate. This anti-inflammatory, that's one of the major pathways. That detox and methylation, it's really important because those things, if those pathways are blocked, then your vitality is blocked, and you'll notice you don't recover nearly as well. And this is where other infections can start to grow in your body. It's usually not just mold that you have. You also see that there's different pathogens like Klebsiella or Citrobacter or Blastocystis. And one of the pathways that gets backed up is called beta-glucuronidase, and that's where you don't unconjugate hormones. And so you have hormones that recycle, and that's what triggers like hot flashes, because your body's like, this hormone is not active. Hey everybody, welcome to the Health Accelerator Challenge today. And we'll let you guys come in. I apologize for getting off to a little bit of a late bloomer here, but we got some fun things to talk about today. And I want to hear what's new in your life. Did any of you get some great value out of Dr. Ashley Wright being on with us, our PT, longevity posture specialist? And if you have not reached out to her, make sure you do. We'll be sending some information out. But today we're going to be talking about some what I think are exciting things, some of the new peptides that I've been utilizing, and then I'm going to answer any of the questions that you guys have. So one of the things that we talk about is this ageless future. And if you think of like an ageless future operating system, you want to think like, well, what are the pathways that are most likely to get backed up in your body? So if those of you who you think about your health complications, just ask yourself the question, like, well, do you have any of these things? So if you look at your health from kind of this ageless future, you want to say, okay, how's my inflammatory pathways? Because we call it inflammaging, and so if you have high levels of inflammation, as you know, like inflammation can be really good because it's how we recover from injuries, and it's one of the most important ways of sweeping out toxins in our body. And cortisol being higher in the morning, it's awesome because that's the rebuilding. It's like sweeping things up after you've done carpentry all night, with your growth hormone. But if inflammation gets out of control, joints start degrading faster, your organs start shutting down, you start aging at a much higher rate. This anti-inflammatory, that's one of the major pathways. And we're going to weave in some of these peptides as we go through these. But the second pathway is your detox and methylation pathways. And with anti-inflammatories, you can look at your fibrinogen levels, you can look at lysosomes, you can look at calprotectin, you can look at your sedimentation rate, you can look at homocysteine. All these things are like really important metrics to look at. And then if you look at your detox and methylation, once again, homocysteine would be on there, but so would AST, ALT, or alkaline phosphatase, or ALK-Phos. Your GGT, we look at metals. So for those of you who've done your metabolomics test, you may see in your urine these metabolites that relate to heavy metal exposure or mold. Many of you, we run mold antibody tests to see if your body's having a response to mold, which is very common. Now, I was talking to a client, can't remember if it's today or yesterday, but I could walk into a room, and if it was moldy, I could feel it come up my spine, and it was just like, I knew. And then pretty soon my nose would get stuffy, I'd get kind of achy, and then I'd just say, I can't sleep in this hotel or wherever it was, try to get out of there quickly. And a lot of times it was like, conferences, either I was hosting events, putting on like a medical conference, or I was speaking at conferences. And it wasn't until, kind of the information on cell danger response came out because, there's things I could do to help calm it down on the detox and methylation pathways, but it wasn't until I learned about, kind of the mitochondria, and if you can get the mitochondria corrected, using like MOTS-C, 5-amino-1-MQ, methylene blue, that made such a big difference, along with different binders to pull out the mold. But that detox and methylation, it's really important because, those things, if those pathways are blocked, then your vitality is blocked, and you'll notice you don't recover nearly as well. And this is where other infections can start to grow in your body. It's usually not just mold that you have. You also see that there's, different like pathogens like Klebsiella or Citrobacter or Blastocystis, different parasites and bacterial overgrowths that happen when our detox and methylation pathways aren't optimized. So one thing you'll notice in your protocols, you'll see that, not only do we have you on different peptides, for your 3 different phases, but you'll also see that there's cell core binders. So we may put you on biotoxin binder, a heavy metal environmental toxin binder. You may be on the VidRad Chem binder, but these binders are really important to keep those methylation pathways. And then once again, I'll come back to these, but how many of you have noticed issues in detoxification and methylation? Maybe you get brain fog, or maybe you notice that, you're very sensitive to the environment that you're around. And I think it's really helpful to, kind of check in and see how your body does. The third pathway are your hormone pathways. So if we're looking, for the ageless future operating system, it's all built around optimizing pathways, but these are the pathways that can start to cause our ageless future to be compromised, and that becomes an aging future. But the hormones are really critical because they impact your vitality, and as we age, different hormone levels start to diminish. And so, if you think of hormones, you have to make hormones, and then you have to take hormones somewhere. And then the cell has to receive those hormones. And then once the cell utilizes those hormones, they actually need to be metabolized and broken down and eliminated and excreted. And one of the pathways that gets backed up is called beta glucuronidase, and that's where you don't unconjugate hormones. And so you have hormones that recycle, and that's what triggers like hot flashes, because your body's like, this hormone is not active, and it's already been used, and that's where we look at these beta glucuronidase pathways, and you can't just throw hormones on it. Doesn't always fix the issue. It may help temporarily, but then the hot flashes or the symptoms come back, whatever hormonal symptoms is, because that pathway is missed. So there's different tests, but some of the main things for looking at hormones is run the hormone panel, and that's where we can look in the blood, or we can do a Dutch panel or a salivary panel for cortisol. But when you want to look at what's transporting it, you want to look at your protein totals in the blood, but you also want to look at your albumin, because albumin does carry a certain percentage of your testosterone, albeit a small percentage. You want to look at your globulin totals, and then you want to look at your sex hormone binding globulins. And those give us a very good understanding as far as what's going on in the hormonal pathways that could be getting in the way of you having, optimal health. So how many of you have noticed that? You said, oh man, my pituitary, maybe it's your stimulating hormone, like your LH or FSH or your TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Those could be down as well. The fourth pathway is the cardio insulin pathway. And this one I think is probably one that is the most common in probably 80% of labs that we see, is where your anion gap gets elevated. And what that means is you've got metabolic acidosis. So your body is in a state of where your blood is so acidic you can't get the electrolytes into the cells, but it also indicates there's disruption in your vagus nerve. And so do you guys remember the 3 Gs? the gagging, gasping, and gripping. So 3Gs can really help on identifying if one of the reasons why your hormones can get off is because you've got this vagal nerve issue. And so this cardio insulin, if you see that your anion gap's high, make sure you're deploying the 3Gs. And oh, excuse me, I had a question. Ashley, good to have you on. It's just giving you props for last week. Thanks so much. But what are your thoughts on blood spot testing for us ladies to test more often as our bodies are adjusting? So this could be the blood spot like Cyfox, or there's another company, ZRT, that does blood spot. I think it's great. I mean, the interesting thing about that, yes, because your circadian rhythms, especially if you're menstruating, I think that's important. If you're postmenopausal, it might not be as helpful. But yeah, absolutely. The more you can kind of get it targeted, the better. So good. Thanks for bringing that up. Um, and blood spots are pretty easy. So on the cardioinsulin pathway, biggest thing you want to look at is VO2 max. And how many of you have done your VO2 max? Actually, I know you did it when you're here for the retreat and you crushed it. Um, and then how many of you probably need to get out here and get that test done, because my job is to get you guys living to be like 150 or even more, but your VO2 max, if you read Peter Attia's book Outlive, there's so much data that shows that by having a VO2 max, especially if you can get into the elite category, like your all-cause mortality is just like diminishes rapidly. And so that's the big thing I've been working on this year is getting from, I'm on the excellent category. The last time I checked, I was like a 50 or 51, and then I'm pushing it into the elite. And so I need to jump on there and do that. But VO2 max, that's one of the tests. You can do the carotid artery scan. You can do a full body scan. From a cardiovascular perspective, the most important markers are the apolipoprotein A and especially the apolipoprotein B. So ideally, you want to look at apolipoprotein A more like kind of the protective or like the HDL cholesterol, and then the B is more of those small little particles that cause arterial sclerosis and plaque buildup. And if we can get yours below 80 on that apolipoprotein B, then there's a massive removal of threats for cardiovascular events. You want to look at your triglycerides, your uric acid levels, your iron, your ferritin, your iron binding capacity. Look at red blood cells, hematocrit, hemoglobin, MCV. These are all really important. And then looking at C-peptide and your insulin fasting are really important markers for this, because if you can optimize this cardio insulin pathway, then that's really what's generating energy. And that's when your mitochondria, they come out of that cell danger response. Your body starts generating all this energy and you just feel amazing. So that's, yeah, so far. I think these are critical but if you think of these pathways that you want to remove all the interferences and you want to really focus on optimizing these. First, your anti-inflammatory. The second one we've talked about is detox methylation. The third is your hormones. Your fourth is your cardiovascular and insulin pathways. And then the fifth one is your HPA axis and neurotransmitters. And this, if you guys have read my book or if you look at your reset documents, one of the first things we do when you're ready to take your health to the next level, even if you've gone through a program, you're going to the next level, then the HPA axis reset is something that is helpful to focus on, because what it does is it helps regulate that gut-brain connection. But HPA stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and it's the way that your brain is sensing threats in the environment. So, we all have a lot of stress, and sleep can be compromised, and then I just did a podcast. I was on interviewed on the Jay Campbell podcast. You want to talk more about peptides and stem cells, and one of the big things we talked about is all the dopamine that people get, especially kids, when you're on social media and you're just scrolling through pages of, doom scrolling. You get like you get dopamine depleted, and so dopamine reset is really important for that HPA axis. And I mentioned to Jay, I said, well, it's easier to just like kind of let information be flown into you from easy sources versus sitting down and reading a book. It's a totally different experience. And so and he mentioned a study that he saw where people's IQ has dropped by 9 points, which the researchers attribute it to the fact that we can't focus anymore because we need all this stimulation, and that's where the geniuses or whoever is behind the social media, you can call them geniuses, you can call them sinisters, but they have made it addictive, and so it's hurting our brain. So this HPA axis is really important, and that's why we're like, hey, an hour before you go to bed, just turn everything off and give your brain this great opportunity to just like read a book again, make love, go for a walk in the evening, go check out the moon. The full moon's been great, been amazing, and but just do something besides put more stimulation in your body. And usually I find that just writing a letter to somebody, or talking to your family and your kids, your spouse. It's really nice. So that's the HPA axis reset. But the testing we can do, you can look at neurotransmitters, look at your adrenal hormones. You can also, see a lot in the blood labs as far as how these metabolites are processed. And then the stool test is a really important one too. Okay, the next pathway in this ageless future operating system is your immune system. And this one, I think we all understand the power of the immune system, but one of the things that is missing a lot is actually knowing what to do about it. And so you can look at your CBC, but the most important is your white blood cell analysis. So this means looking at your total white blood cell count, and ideally we want you between about 5.3 and 8% of your total blood volume being the white blood cells. And then you want to look at the percentages of white blood cells. So you want to 50 to 60% of those being neutrophils. If it gets above 60%, there could be some kind of infection from a bacteria or a virus. If the lymphocytes, you want those at about 25 to 30%. And if it's any higher than that, there could be a viral infection, especially if it gets up in the 40 percentile, like 43, 44. It's a good sign you've got some kind of viral infection or COVID. Sometimes we see it with even getting vaccinated. And then you want to look at your monocytes, and those you want them to be like 7% or below. If they're higher, you could have some kind of parasite or pathogen, or you could have some type of oxidative stress in your blood vessels that could be dangerous, or you could be recovering from an infection. And then look at your eosinophils. You want those below 3%. And if they're higher than that, there's a good chance you could have some like allergies, like either seasonal allergies or allergies to foods that you're eating. And then look at your basophils, and you want those like below 1%. And if they're higher, there could be some type of like lingering kind of chronic infection. So the immune system is really important because you can look at viruses, you look at Lyme disease, you look at mold. There's so many things that can start wearing us down. And I had a patient earlier this week, and he'd been sick for a long time. So he was on antibiotics from his doctor, and I was like, we got to run your stool test. And once we ran it, we were able to see that there's all these co-infections, and literally took his health, and it stopped it, and he was just, going downhill quickly. And but it was because of those pathogens. So the immune system becomes really important. And this is, the whole purpose of the hack tonight is thinking about these pathways and just how much they can compromise our future, if we don't do something about it. So the big one is, yeah, that immune system. So if you look at all these pathways, there's one more pathway that we'll cover, and then I'm going to talk about some of the new peptides and how they work on multiple pathways at once. But before I move on, any questions on this, or are you guys, hopefully you're kind of diagnosing yourself somewhat, so you're saying, you can correlate, your health to it. So let's jump into the final one. This is the mitochondrial pathway. And and this relates to kind of the epigenome. And I think it's fascinating because your VO2 max will show the health of your mitochondria. You can look at your carbon dioxide, your anion gap, and then you can also go and look at your mitochondrial health, by analyzing like your liver enzymes, specifically, if you look at your AST and ALT, and then you combine that with your creatinine levels. And so the mitochondria, the interesting thing is they can produce a generous amount of energy as long as these other pathways are corrected. And the funny thing is what we're learning, and this is like all the longevity, books and research, and the great things that have come out in the last 3 years are all, they keep leading back to mitochondria. But if the mitochondria aren't in a cell danger response, all those pathways are healthier. And so it's like you want to be working on mitochondria as you go, and that's where it becomes really fascinating, because if you think about what the mitochondria does, the mitochondria is you've got this what's called electron transport chain, and NAD actually activates that electron transport chain, and then you have these protons and neutrons that are moving across it. But that's how you get energy into the cells. It's like fuel that feeds the cell, and then the mitochondria are, the byproduct can be antioxidants, it can be ATP, it can be energy generation. And so, but what happens too is when the mitochondria are healthy, you notice you'll have, less oxidative stress, you'll have less cancerous cells, you'll have better cellular expression. And so it becomes probably from a longevity perspective of all these, it's one of the most powerful pathways you can work on. So when it's not expressed, this is when you just feel like, man, I just don't have the oomph that I used to. There's a good chance that there's some cell danger response in the mitochondria. We see where people have very reactive immune systems to whatever environment they are put into, and they have this kind of this reaction. And so the mitochondria become, not only are they one of the most heavily studied areas in the body, and in longevity, but from an overall, managing your health, and really just having this great expression of vitality, the mitochondria are phenomenal. So let's talk about some of the peptides you can use to treat these pathways, and because there's quite a few of them, and I've shared on podcasts and other hacks some of these great new peptides that we're using. And one of those that activates mitochondria that I've wanted to get my hands on, and I've used it in the past, but I couldn't find a good pharmacy to make it. But that's a peptide called Humanin. And Humanin is phenomenal, because Humanin is a peptide that, if you look at all of these kind of core pathways that we talked about today, the mitochondrial pathways, the immune system, the HPA axis, the cardioinsulin, the hormones, the vitality, the detox methylation and the anti-inflammatory. These are like the core seven. And Humanin literally hits on almost every single one of these pathways. And so what Humanin is it's this mitochondrial derived peptide, and it's a peptide that has been linked to removing senescent cells. There's actually a study that I'll reference here, and I'll put it in the show notes for all of you, so you can access this. Um, oh, and let me answer your question too. Here's the study, and I'll go through it. But actually, I've also noticed many premenopausal ladies give up on stress reduction, HRT, intense training, and balancing hormones because they're not being treated properly. That's so true. Like it, because yeah, because it's if you lose hormones, yeah, yeah, sarcopenia can, it can step in very quickly. So it's like the most important time to not give up prior to sarcopenia. I mean, this is like in your 40s, ladies, it's so critical to get your hormones balanced. Like late 30s, early 40s is like a critical time, so that, when menopause hits, maybe in your early 50s, like your body is just like in the best shape it's ever been. So thank you for bringing that up. And I think all these pathways we're talking about right now goes right into this conversation we're having today about these seven core pathways for ageless future. So yeah, your friend's an OBGYN and told her not to worry about her hormones because nobody wants a lean grandma. Holy cow. Nobody wants a fit grandma. Like just let it go. Yeah, I think I think we've ignored female health for too long, because most of the research is done on men, because men, we're kind of like, dumb creatures compared to women. We just kind of have this pretty even set. Our hormones don't fluctuate much, and so they isolate women from the studies. But you're right, Ashley. It's such a critical thing to get this optimized, and that's where, if you've ever worked with Tasha on the team, even David, just phenomenal in the hormone world. So Humana, let's talk about this cool peptide, because um, right now I'm working on VO2 max. So I'm doing ACE31. So I'm getting muscle building, and ACE31 is crazy because I can add like 2 to 3 more reps per set when I'm lifting weights. And I haven't done anything different but taking ACE31 once a week. And then I'm doing testosterone and ipamorelin, about every other day. And then I've been stacking Humanin with SS31 and then 5-amino-1-MQ. And it's been phenomenal from just an energy perspective, VO2 max training. But Humanin is a small mitochondrial peptide, and they're looking at it for age reversal. But one of the areas that it's in clinical trials for is for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And so if you think of senescence, senescent cells are when our cells go through a certain amount of, it's it's like photocopied, right? So you have, the cell goes through different cycles, but the Hayflick limit limits your cell cycles to about 40 to 50 cycles. And then that cell lineage becomes senescent. And when one cell lineage becomes senescent, it spits out all those seven pathways all get blocked up because it's just sending out the signal of danger. And then the mitochondria go into freak out mode, your hormone production gets shut down. And so Humanin is one of the best senescent cell removals in the peptide wheelhouse that I know of. But what it does is it's cytoprotective, so it preserves the role of the mitochondria. It helps with cellular viability. What this study found is that it also helps reverse the decay of organ and tissue function. So especially for those of you who have had like cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and you're looking to completely rejuvenate the organ systems, Humanin has a great role in those, and it's naturally expressed in your body, but by stimulating those pathways just a little more, we see that the body has all these signs of aging that start getting reversed. So some of the signs of aging, you'll see the telomere shortening, you'll see epigenetic changes, you see higher levels of oxidative stress. But Humana is just this short peptide that can start reversing all those by changing the inflammatory expression. It helps reverse cognitive decline, which is one reason why it looks to be very favorable for dementia, Alzheimer's. But the other thing it is it's metaboloprotective, which means it helps if you have metabolic disease, it helps change that expression. So that once again, if you have that high anion gap, there's a good chance you've got metabolic acidosis, which can indicate there's metabolic disease, which downstream that impacts every organ in your body and all seven of the pathways that we talked about, these solid seven. But the other thing is what they found is with Humanin, it's cardioprotective, neuroprotective. It also can be one of the best ways to get somebody out of kind of this cell danger response. So if you have reactions to mold, or if you're very sensitive to like heavy metals, or if you notice that any kind of glyphosate exposure, Humanin can be a phenomenal peptide for you. And so one of the things that one of the pathways that it works on is they call Humanin this small human-like peptide, but it works on the glucose uptake, so it helps. It's called GLUT4 transportation. The other thing that Humanin does is it helps with these pro-apoptotic proteins. So so when your cells, when you need autophagy, it goes and cells get removed, and apoptosis occurs when those cells get consumed and released. Humanin also has this role in expressing some of the myocardial cells in the heart. So it can help reverse some of the fibrosis for people who've had heart failure. In the kidneys, it helps preserve the cell viability. And they've seen in advanced kidney disease that there's high circulating levels of Humanin. If and that's what your kidneys utilize to get rid of the systemic inflammation and oxidative stress. So it's pretty interesting because most of this research that I've shared today is done in 2019, and what we're seeing is that this peptide could be a great one, not only for the kidneys and the heart, and just some of these longevity pathways with getting rid of the senescent cells, but we're also seeing it maybe in breast cancer. They're seeing some significance in certain populations who have a greater propensity towards breast cancer when they've looked at some of the genes. They're noticing even with chondrocyte proliferation. So that's for musculoskeletal disorders. They're finding that not only from a cognitive perspective, but there's a role in traumatic brain injuries, and there's a role in these activation of mitochondrial for greater insulin sensitivity. So the beautiful thing is, if you look at those seven pathways and you start saying, well, how do I stack up? How am I doing? And if there was, kind of one peptide that I think addresses all seven of those pathways really nicely, I'd have to say Human is probably the one I could find that would be kind of that domino that knocks down all of these. So because once again, it helps with your production of the antioxidants. So you're getting rid of free radicals. So for the detox methylation, it lowers all the inflammatory mechanisms because you're removing senescent cells, and it's helping with mitochondrial expression. So that's going to help the hormone production. It helps with the cardiovascular, the insulin sensitivity. It works on the brain, and that's why it's being, studied heavily for, some of the damage to the neurons in Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. It's great for the immune response because you're getting those cells out of cell danger response. So I think Humanin is a great way, but the biggest thing is make sure that as you go, we'll be testing all of these 7 pathways and in your Ageless Future operating system. And so the challenge this week is express Humanin on your own, and maybe it's in your peptide protocol. If it's not, you'd like it, let us know. But you can express Humanin by doing mitochondrial exercises. So this could be like a 20-minute workout. And I just interviewed Ben Greenfield, and he gave a great use case of this. But yeah, you just go 4 minutes, and you're going kind of zone 2, moderate, and then you go 30 seconds all out, then 4 minutes, 30 seconds all out, 4 minutes, 30 seconds all out, and 4 minutes, 30 seconds all out. And it's a great way to activate your body's own Humanin supply. So really appreciate you guys, and appreciate all the love, all the care. And for those of you who are coming to the retreat, tonight we'll see you at dinner, and then tomorrow we got a packed house, and I'm really excited because we've got some very phenomenal things we'll be sharing. And we've got a special announcement coming up. We have our 20th anniversary we'll be celebrating next month. And so I will be having, we're going to have these quarterly retreats that I want you guys to come to. And so they're going to be kind of some retreats that are going to be different than the longevity retreats we do. Every quarter, we're going to have a specific theme, but we'll be knocking out like how to optimize gut health and detoxification, and then we'll be doing some activities that will keep you guys on your longevity pursuit. So appreciate you guys, and we will see you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.